Welcome, episode 4, Future of Beauty Unfiltered podcast. I'm so excited. I have 2 people with me again today, and actually on a personal level, this is probably the one I've been looking forward to doing the most because I have no idea what either of you are going to be saying, but I'm excited nevertheless. So we have our very own CEO, Chris Bullock, with us again. We will be talking very closely about marketing and menopause, what that means for us in the category and how we can kind of navigate that. So thank you for joining us today, Chris.
Thank you, Hannah.
And more importantly, who I'd also like to introduce is Tina, the wonderful Tina Backhouse, who is currently the UK country manager for women's health in Theramex. Tina has over 25 years experience in global senior leadership roles within the pharmaceutical industry, bringing that experience to launch innovative products across diverse ranges of therapy areas with both large and small pharma companies, and most recently serving as business manager at Essentia's Diabetes Care, having spent the previous 12 years smashing it at Pfizer, and then went on to join and lead Theramex in the UK women's health business in 2020. Welcome, Tina.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Oh, absolute pleasure. I'm so excited to have you here today. Obviously, we've been working together for a while, so no doubt we're all very familiar with what we're trying to do. But I'd love it if you would, for our listeners, just recap a little bit and talk to me more about your own personal mission and what you're doing at the moment to support and educate women around the menopause.
Okay, so, well, thank you for that, and thanks for the opportunity. Obviously, for those people that don't know, Theramex is a global company based in the UK. We're based in London, and we are solely around women's health. And on a global level, that looks at menopause, osteoporosis, fertility, and contraception. And I lead the UK business, and as you said, in the UK, the business is, I think 96% of our business in the UK is menopause. So that's a big area for us and a big area that we're focused on. Obviously, at the moment, I'm sure there's nobody that's listening that hasn't heard the word menopause or, the stuff that's going on around it. So it's a topic that is out there at the moment. And for me personally, I came to Theramex when I joined Theramex in a very typical haphazard way. I knew nothing about them, and it was all done as a rush. I got a telephone call saying, would I be interested in this role? I had a discussion with someone on the Friday, and I went in to meet them in their office in Sloane Square on the Monday, and I started on the Wednesday. And I think for me, at that time, I had worked in a number of roles in big pharma, in small pharma, lots of different therapy areas, worked in different countries, and I was looking for something a bit different, but I didn't really know what I was looking for. And then I kind of walked into Theramex on that Monday morning and knew immediately this was what I was looking for, because I felt, as a middle-aged woman and a passionate campaigner for equality for women, that this was a chance to really look at the inequalities in women's healthcare, and especially around older women's healthcare, and really make a difference. So for me, it is a personal mission, the stuff that we're doing around menopause and all the work we're doing, and the amazing women and men that we work with to in all different types of the business, to really drive that equality of healthcare for older women.
And I guess, so I think one of the things when I first met you, so I was actually at the 34 years of age, I knew obviously about menopause, but I have to be honest to say, as a consumer, I was ignorant past the point of it going, you have hot flashes and kind of your periods come to a halt. And actually, when we started talking to you about it in particular, it really opened my eyes. And Chris, I know this was a bit of a moment for you as well, where when we started really looking into the world of menopause, just how much of a lack of understanding as a female, let alone the expectation of men as well to have that understanding as a female of what's going to go on and happen in my body at a later stage in life. And kind of the pressure when you then start looking into it to try and understand it, the amount of fear-mongering that's currently out there, misinformation. What do you see, in your views, are kind of the key issues in relation to menopause within the UK market at the moment? Because I think there are quite a few.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. First of all, I think you're right. I certainly, when I'm 52. When I was going through perimenopause and menopause, I was sat there waiting for a hot flush, and I never got a hot flush, and I still never. I mean, I sometimes feel a bit warm, but sometimes it's 40 degrees in this country. So, I was waiting for a hot flush and I never got it because I didn't know that hot flushes were just one symptom of around 48 symptoms that could affect women. I definitely had brain fog. I was definitely forgetting things. I was definitely putting my keys in the fridge and doing those sorts of things. And I thought I had early onset dementia. I thought, this is it. I'm going to be one of those strange people that gets in their late 40s dementia, and that's what's happening to me. So, and there's a lot of women out there, and that comes down to education. And I'm very fortunate in the business I work in that I was spend my time talking to doctors and specialists and was able to self-diagnose myself, because I had been to see GPs and I had been to see gynecologists, one of whom, a very well-respected gynecologist, said to me, when I said, what's wrong with me, he said, I wish I had £1 for every woman that asked me that. And really, looking back on that now, that seems quite amazing that he said that to me, that he didn't recognise that I was in perimenopause. So I think there's many things that, are issues for us at the moment in the UK. Education is the main one, I think, and that's education for women so they understand what to expect, what's happening to their body, but also education for healthcare professionals in the way that you would expect a consultant gynecologist to be able to pick up someone that was in perimenopause, or a GP. Clearly that's not the case. But there's also wider education. 20 years ago, before the WHI story was headlined on the Daily Mail and told all women that were taking HRT they were going to get breast cancer, an extremely flawed study that's since been proven not to have any merit whatsoever. 30% of women that could take HRT in this country were taking HRT. Now, even today, with the Davina effect, with, people talking about it on Loose Women, with amazing women like Carolyn Harris and Louise Newson and the British Menopause Society all doing their thing, it's still only 15% in the UK of eligible women who could take HRT are taking HRT. So we've never recovered from that. And I think so that level of education and acceptance and talking about it and understanding, I still get people come up to me who I vaguely know from being a school mum in the supermarket saying, oh, well, I'd love to take HRT, but, I'm very worried about cancer. My doctor's told me that, the risks and all those kind of things. So that education for women, for HCPs, healthcare professionals, and for wider society is incredibly important, I think.
I think wider society is one that when we were kind of going through this process, I know, Chris, you have a lot of views on this as well. It's the language that's used for some reason. We were talking about this earlier downstairs. Yeah. Even when you talk about skincare for kind of the forgotten, invisible, whatever kind of consumer you want to call Gen X, however we want to categorize that person, it gets to the point where you kind of in the external worlds, and when it comes to seeing yourself being represented within advertising or whatever, you get to 35 and then the next thing you're retired and living in Florida. So it's kind of this really important stage of life, and the way in which we talk about it has negative connotations sometimes within the culture and even sometimes the marketing community. And I think that was definitely, Chris, when we were started working with you and what you guys are trying to do at Theramex, and obviously Femoral and the brands, and the way in which you can support people, be that HRT or an alternative, because as you've always said, you believe more in the fact that women should have choice.
Yeah.
From a marketing perspective, Chris, that's a pretty big thing to have that revelation over, really, within that category of consumer.
Yeah, I think the marketing community has to accept some of the blame for this. I think that there's always been a leaning, and it's probably not a new thing, in marketing towards the younger generation. If I had a quid for every brand that came to us and said we're targeting Gen Z, and then more often than not, I would say on average, most of our clients are about a generation out. in terms of where they, so if they think their market is Gen X, it's really the boomers, etc.
Okay.
And I think it's unsurprising in a way. Everybody wants to associate with youth. Youth is sexy, youth is cool. And I think, and from a commercial point of view, of course, it's nuts because, money is concentrated in those older generations, by and large, disposable income. And I think, the marketing industry has not, there's obviously some very good exceptions, but has made the mistake of always favouring marketing to younger people.
And I think it's about what we can now do to start making that shift and that change. And actually, I think the menopause discussion, the menopause movement, however you want to start talking about it, is actually created quite a big wave and is, I think, opening the door to actually making people more aware, not just of the challenges that come from a woman that is going through a menopause, but all of these wider challenges that these type of women within this stage of their life face. Because, I think one of the things for me that always I found really interesting was, even when you talk about menopause and you look at those products, and let's go natural supplement route for now and we'll not talk about HRT, a lot of it is kind of very much, life's not over, but it's not empowering them to kind of go, don't worry about it. Here's the help, carry on, keep being awesome. And I think that's kind of the real shift that we're trying to see in that space.
I agree, yeah. And we talked about this before, didn't we? Because of the work that you did for us on Femoral. And you're right, for us, it's about women having a choice. If they want HRT, they should get the best possible HRT. If they don't want to take HRT or they can't take HRT, there should be an alternative, a clinically proven alternative for them that can help support them, with the symptoms of their menopause. So, for us, Femoral and having that as a food supplement was a good choice for that. And, we talked very much about positivity, making it a positive message rather than a negative message. And, that's extremely important, I think. We saw today that the Women Inequalities Committee launched their report just this morning on menopause and was talking about talking about women of this age in the workplace and the devastating effect that not supporting women of this age, who are often at the top of their game, who are often big earners, big tax contributors, running companies, given our economic situation, if we don't support those women to maintain their optimum value to society as well as everything else, then we're missing a trick, basically. And that's incredibly important, I think, moving forward.
So I think we've spoken a little bit about kind of the issues within this area. Chris, when we started working with Tina, the team, and Femoral and Theramex and all, actually, there's so many layers to it. That's the thing. There's what Theramex are trying to do. And then there's actually Femoral, and also there's what you're trying to do. There's so many things at different levels. And I think, as a man, and this is important, how did you feel when you actually started being exposed to, all of the challenges? As someone that has a wife and daughters and, female relatives, what were your thoughts when you were exposed to the world of menopause?
Well, yes, I have a wife and two daughters and one son. So I often feel that I live in a slightly feminized world, and that might be a good thing. I think it does have some positives. So I won't say I've had first-hand experience with the menopause because that will be odd. I guess it's second-hand experience. So I feel I had a slight starter on the subject, but for me, I was immediately intrigued. There's something wrong around the menopause, is what I think I'd felt initially before we came to this. So for me, it was a great opportunity actually to explore a complex and demanding subject and look to try and create a marketing opportunity out of it. There's that marketing paradox, which is where there is a conflict or there's often creative tension, and out of that you have great opportunity. And I think what we found is a great opportunity here. But otherwise, I'm still, I would say, still slightly perplexed. We talked about it a lot, about it as the kind of last taboo. Is it really the last taboo? I'm sure there may be others to be uncovered, as it were. But I think it's kind of strange. We think about all the other subjects that have been difficult in the past have, I think, been being brought into the open. So, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, mental health, all these things when I was very small, which is quite a long while ago, were difficult almost for everybody, it seemed, to talk about. But there's been such good work to make those things, to normalize them, I would say. Why is it that this one particular subject has not been? Now, I don't have an answer to that. What I would say is I think there's an opportunity. What is astonishing, though, is the lack of knowledge. And as you pointed out, Hannah, to me, I could guess what most men's level of knowledge and understanding about the menopause was. I even sort of assumed that most women knew much more, even if it was heading their way or they were heading its way rather than being in menopause. And so, I was surprised. I mean, we have a number of 20 and 30 somethings in the office, female, and one of the great things is we opened up quite an open discussion here about it. And what they said almost universally was, I have no idea. Yeah. I have no idea what I'm heading for. And in some sense, they found that daunting, more daunting than it kind of should be.
Yeah.
And that's one of the factors that drove the menopause positivity idea, which we should probably explore a bit further, but needs a little bit of explaining probably.
I mean, positivity. What's it all about?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, we'll ask you first, I guess, and then Chris can chip in.
Well, I think, ask Chris first. Ask Chris, and then I will give you my view on it.
Oh, go on then.
Okay, well, the first thing I should do is sort of say what it isn't, which is not kind of this, Pollyanna perfect thinking, which is like, all you have to do is, sit and hum and it'll go away kind of thing. Because obviously it won't. And I think, what's clear from the actual research we did and the discussions we've had and, one's normal life contacts is that it can be a very challenging situation, can provide some very big challenges to people. But what I felt in particular was that society was making it worse. So all the discomfort in talking about it, the stigma. I mean, Tina's referred very effectively to menopause-age women in the workplace, many of whom I think have had a terrible time and probably are still doing so now. How could society be doing that now? So I think what we really saw was, is there a way of facing up to this in a way which at least is with a positive mindset that actually can mean society does some things differently? I think, and the kind of key strands behind the positivity. First of all, aging is a natural journey. I mean, it's a natural thing. So first of all, menopause is going to happen to all women. It's not a disaster. It's not something imposed on them other than by nature, as it were. Secondly, we're all, both men and women, living longer lives. So we have to start thinking about, let's say, positive aging. The other thing that struck me really strongly was that all stages of life have their own challenges.
Yeah.
Okay? And probably the most challenging period for many people, more than perhaps the menopause, is being a teenager. Yeah. We've all been a teenager. Has its ups and has some terrible downs. Okay? So it's just a life stage. And nobody would say, why wouldn't you encourage a teenager to live a positive teenagehood, as it were? So I think, it's just another one of life's challenges. And therefore, why the taboo, almost the stigma, the difficulty, the discomfort, all of those things are actually societal. So if it's not bad enough, some of the symptoms are going to be a real challenge for everybody.
Yep.
Then you've got society imposing this burden when we've learned to talk in a normal fashion about every other major issue, it seems, that society has coped with. So I actually think the brand could play a role in this. And we're great believers in trying to find authentic purpose in the brands we work with and not overlaying some unassociated cause. And it struck me here that the brand itself could play a very positive role by promoting, and it's this particular angle. I mean, there are a lot of people trying to break the taboo around menopause. That's a good thing. But that we could take a more specific angle, which is if society will look at it a little differently, and let's encourage society to do so, then the brand can have a role in normalizing the subject and taking away some of the associated mental anguish that society imposes on people who are undergoing the menopause.
Well said.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I 100% agree with that. I think it's, I remember when you first told us about the idea, I think it's absolutely the way we should be going, you know. And I totally agree with you about, you know, I've got a teenage daughter, and I see the anguish and the slamming of doors and the, you know, hormonal rushes that go there, and, you know, but we make it a positive experience. And, you know, and I think, you know, it's something that I've thought about a lot, and you know, it's very easy, or it's not, it's very difficult to not always be very angry about the inequality of women and the inequality of women in healthcare. And we know there's been inequality of women in healthcare. And for those people who, you know, query about it, then read Kate Muir's book, you know, Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Menopause, and it will tell you very eloquently in their incredible research around that. But there is inequality in women's healthcare, and especially for older women. You know, and you only have to look at clinical trials and the way clinical trials are set up to exclude women and to exclude different things. That means that our healthcare is not equal. And I suppose for us, you know, the discussion around positivity and the chance to use Femerel as a brand to really champion that is a very positive thing. We want it to be a positive thing. I feel very passionately that one of the reasons I do this is so that, you know, my 12-year-old daughter in 40 years' time is not having this same conversation that we're now having, and with her daughters, and, you know, that generation. We have to change this. We have to change this perception. And actually, you know, at the moment there's some backlash, you know, from tabloid media. And I say that in a demeaning way because I mean it in a demeaning way. There is some backlash around, you know, these celebrities using their voice and about menopause and Davina well, you know what? Great that those women are using their voice, because we all have to use our platform. And I'm incredibly proud that those women, whether they're celebrities like Davina and Penny Lancaster, whether they're politicians like Carolyn Harris and Caroline Noakes, whether they're doctors, you know, like the British Menopause Society, Louise Newson, any of these people that are using their voice in a positive way to try and change how menopause is viewed, how we see it, and, you know, to make it a positive stage of life, just as Chris said, should be applauded and not dismissed just because somebody happens to be famous.
Absolutely. And I think as well it's about kind of changing the mindset through the generations. I think that's a really big opportunity. So, you know, I'm the eldest of 6 kids, 5 girls. And
wow.
My mum, yeah.
A lot of doors slamming in your house.
Well, she used to just stick us in the garden and let us rock it out, if I'm completely honest. It was a safer way to do it for the building.
That's why it's such a scrapper.
Exactly. No, I was the eldest as well, so I kept them in line. Anyway, but my mum went through the menopause, and we are very, very close as a family. We knew nothing about it. We just kind of, for a period of time, were like, Mum's losing the plot, guys. She's forgetting everything. She's just disappearing for afternoons. She's getting mood swings, you know, all these kind of things. And we didn't have that open conversation, but also we didn't have that awareness to go, Mum, you all right? Like, you know, is something going on? Do you need, you know, do we need, and I think there is that generational thing of being comfortable to, there's a spider hanging over my
that's lucky.
microphone. Oh, there we go. It's on my bottle now. You know, there is definitely that generational challenge as well. And like you said, you don't want your daughter to be having the same challenges that you've had and that other people were having it, that they are today. And I do hope and I believe that as time goes on, there will be this shift. And I think as well, it's about people acknowledging what this target audience do and don't want to respond to. So obviously you guys took the time, rightly so, you know, to ask the questions. You know, one of the first things we said when we started working with you was, we need to ask them and actually find out how they feel about it. And, you know, I think one of the biggest things when it came to, I know, kind of a non-HRT alternative, was they didn't want it to look medical. Because actually it isn't a condition. It is, like you say, Chris, it's just a stage of life. And when we were having kind of discussions internally and working through the way in which we, you know, wanted to communicate kind of Femerel, one of the biggest debates we had was, well, hold on a minute. If I go through my own personal experience growing up, I had the support and I had the conversations about what's going to happen when periods start, what's going to happen, you know, when you get pregnant, what are the stages that you go through. it kind of stops after that.
Yeah.
It basically, the communication gets you to the point of getting up the duff and having the baby.
Yeah.
And actually, if I'm honest, after that, it kind of stops.
So that's, and is that where society thinks that your value ends?
Well,
you know?
I don't know. It's a good question. I think this is half the challenge in what we're trying to unpick at the moment, isn't it?
It's painting women as a kind of a means of production, a reproduction. And I definitely think that's part of it. Although I don't think it's just the prejudice, if you like, is just confined to women. Again, I think we have lived in an age obsessed with youth, and I think that's part of the problem. But I think you're absolutely right, Hannah. It's extraordinary. And again, why is it that you get to that point where it's almost like probably at one time, parents wouldn't have told her about having a period, how they got pregnant, go back. You'd have to go quite a bit back to Victorian times.
Yes.
But it's as though we probably haven't progressed that much when there are no mother-daughter conversations of that kind. Actually, I seem to recall from the research, when we did the qualitative stages and we were interviewing people, that one of the things that some of the women said, was that having an understanding mother who did help them communicate, talk with them about what to expect, was a definite bonus. So again, to me, that ought to be part of the normalisation, but it ought to be the kind of conversation that can happen anywhere, in the workplace, wherever.
Absolutely, and you're absolutely right about not over medicalising it. So I feel quite passionately about this, and that when you're, for example, when you're pregnant and you have a baby, you don't go and see a pregnancy specialist. You go and see your family GP or your community midwives who know you and look after you and help you through this natural part of your cycle. So although I applaud that we have menopause specialists, and thank God we do at the moment, women should just be able to go to their GP. They should be able to go, or if they don't want medical input, they should go to their chemist and look and see what kinds of things could help them through this natural part of their life. We shouldn't be over medicalising this. We shouldn't be insisting women have blood tests and do all that. I see some private clinics, not all private clinics, but some private clinics who are offering wide-ranging tests for women to have, and they don't need most of those tests. And we can't over-medicalise this. It's a natural part of our cycle, and anything that we support, whether that's HRT or non-hormonal treatments and other types of support, or other brands that you work with as well that can support women through this part of their cycle, is exactly the way it should be.
I think that was one of the things I found really fascinating when we started working with you, is actually, like you've just said, it's about choice. If you forget everything else, it's about elevating the fact that women should have a choice in every area of their reproductive rights, situation, like whatever it may be. It's their body, and how they want to deal with it and navigate it is a very personal decision.
Absolutely. And we're already seeing, in some parts of the world, Western world, those choices that, we had progressed being taken back, years and years and years, which, is devastating, I think, for women. But choice comes through education, and it comes through what we said at the beginning of educating women so that they know the choices that are available to them. They know what's happening. They can take control of their menopause or their perimenopause or their postmenopause. About educating pharmacists who might say to somebody who's in their chemist, maybe you could try something to help you with that. Or whether that's a GP or a practice nurse, whoever it is, everybody needs educating to a really high level. And we do, the women's health strategy that was published last week, I really applaud the fact we have a women's health strategy, but there needs to be more tangible things in that women's health strategy it can't just be words. There has to be things that make this change happen for women so that they have these choices and that they can actually move forward in this period of their life.
And based on, so obviously I know that you work at lots of different levels and are trying to be involved in as many, can't talk today, I'll try that again, in as many initiatives as possible. What have you been involved with? What have you seen? what are the attitudes of the MPs, NHS, all these different areas that you're seeing that are positive, and actually potentially some areas that need a little bit of work?
So I think it's interesting, isn't it? So one of the campaigns we were involved in, and we still are, and we were just talking to you about this, is we are working with a education company called Over the Bloody Moon, and developed a hot flush vest, and which we take into organisations.
You don't know what's about to happen very shortly either, buddy.
I'm waiting to try mine on. I mean,
Well,
I saw the news articles, so.
Well, that's hopefully that'll be coming.
yeah. So we were already
Can I wait till winter?
No, we're going to do it right in the peak of August. I'll wait for the next heat wave.
Exactly. So, and we took that with the brilliant Carolyn Harris. She arranged for us, and we did an afternoon in Parliament. And what was so great about that is so many people came, so many MPs came to that, and they came because of Carolyn and the respect they have for her and her campaign. But they were cross-party. We had people from the SNP, we had Labour, Liberal, Conservative, and I'll never really forget being in a room and watching Ian Duncan-Smith and the Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting standing together, sweating
I think I've
profusely.
seen the pictures.
Yeah, we're sweating profusely, and to a point where Ian Duncan-Smith then went on Women's Hour on Radio 4 the next day and talked about the impact it had for him and how they couldn't wait to get it off. They couldn't imagine what it would be like to stand up in Parliament and ask a question to the Prime Minister, experiencing this. So menopause is more than hot flushes. We all know that. But anything that stimulates that conversation is really good. So I see a very big willingness in Parliament by that. I see a big willingness in other things that we've been involved in with government, such as the HRT task force and making sure that we get enough HRT into the country. But what I don't see, and what is challenging, is how it's going to be translated in the NHS, into an NHS that at the moment is overrun and on its knees basically, and is worse than I've ever seen in 25 years of this industry. How do we make a difference? Because that for me is the challenge at the moment. We and other people have brought new medications onto the market. The red tape to get those used locally means that there's postcode prescribing. We're championing the idea of a national formulary so that, whether you live in Surrey, where we are now, which is very beautiful, or whether you live in Doncaster, you should have the same ability to be treated the same for your menopause. You should have the same medications available to you, and that's not the case. We saw a really good study last year from the University of Warwick that said that women that live in these more deprived areas 30% less chance of being prescribed HRT, and if they are prescribed HRT, they are not prescribed the most innovative and best HRT there is. They're prescribed older, cheaper variations of HRT. So there's huge variation in terms of how we're treated. So the NHS, I think, and the way that menopause is treated by some GPs and, a lack of knowledge and education, again, is the sticking point. I think the rest of society is getting behind the message. And certainly my experience of what I saw, as I say, across party in Parliament has been very positive.
Yeah, at least I think what is good is that the time is right. And that's another thing that I think will help us in our campaigning. So if it truly is the last taboo, maybe now is the right time to encounter it, because people seem to be receptive, and that's good. But actually, Tina, one thing you referred to, I'd almost laugh, it wasn't a bit sad really, was education within the medical community and GPs in particular. And a number of things struck me when we were researching this area. First of all, anecdotally, the number of women who talk about having a bad experience at the GP, you almost end up feeling that GPs were kind of menopause deniers, because it almost always seemed to involve them looking for something else, not knowing enough about the subject. I mean, one thing I think came up, which is that I forget the exact statistic, but the amount of training a GP receives is something like it's a 1 hour module, and it's 7-year training or something. So no wonder most of them are floundering. Whereas presumably, if it came to sexually transmitted diseases or even pregnancy, as we said, they're probably pretty good at taking those things in their stride. And that's what all we want them to do, really, regarding the menopause. Just as you say, if it's normalized, be well informed, help people, give them choices,
Absolutely.
and take it all in their stride. And, guess what? Everybody would benefit.
Absolutely. And that's what I would say about the women's health strategy. Look, it's great. We've got, we didn't have a women's health strategy. Now we have. But it has to be more than a document, and it has to be more than words. And one of the things that, we were a bit disappointed, and I say we, as a wider group, not just at Theramex, but lots of different campaigners, was that, at the moment for GPs, if they treat cardiovascular disease or diabetes or any of these things, they are incentivized to do so, by a quaff, and they're incentivized to do so. And actually, the way to make this happen would be to incentivize them to look at the care of this group of women. So, we did want that to happen. We do believe there should be national formulary and equity of prescribing. We do believe there should be education so that women, and readily available, alternatives to HRT, which is why we've gone into, people say to me all the time, well, why would you go in and bring a supplement that for these women when you do HRT successfully? But again, it's about choice, and some women want that choice, and we are not here to be deniers of it. We are here to say, whatever your choice for this period of your life, we are here to support you and make sure that you get actually the best possible treatment in that category.
And I know this is a really simple question, but for me it was actually a really important one in my own education of the process, which was, who can take HRT, who can't, and also the natural or alternative supplements that are out there. Why is it a challenging landscape? And some of it is actually around, how many studies have been done on the effectiveness of that product themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, again, it's very frustrating, when you see things advertised and they're making claims around, this can do this for menopausal women, and they don't have clinical studies. It's really important that we use that data, in the same way that, prescription medicines are given licenses because they have good levels of data and they're seen by regulators. Then that's important as well for women that are buying supplements or choosing a different way. So having that clinical data and having that quality product that can actually make a difference is really important. And because otherwise you could spend an absolute fortune. You could literally sit on the internet all afternoon and spend hundreds and hundreds of pounds trying to make yourself feel better. And we don't want that for women. We want them to be able to find the right product for them that can make them feel better.
Yeah, and the right product that's going to support the lifestyle that they're choosing to follow.
Absolutely, whatever that is, and I take HRT myself. I have friends who don't take HRT. It doesn't matter as long as you are getting the best support and you actually have the choice. That's what makes the difference.
And when you started taking HRT, from that moment where you started kind of realizing that you needed support in that area to then actually bringing it into your system, what did it bring to your personal life?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And hindsight is a wonderful thing, and you can't always see the wood for the trees when you're in that. This is a period of my life when my marriage broke down. I didn't know what I was going to do in my career. Maybe these are all interlinked. And actually, it's very interesting. Louise Newsom from the Newsom Clinic actually doing some research about divorce and relationship breakups during this time, and I do think that is the case. And I know from talking to Carolyn Harris, she feels very passionately that there's a huge percentage of women of this age who are in prison, and where are all these things interlinked in terms of the support they're getting, because we know hormones make such a difference. As I said, for me, it was the not being able to sleep. It was the fact that, I was very active, and suddenly, you know, I couldn't get out of bed without my joints really hurting. I would walk down the stairs sideways because I couldn't bend properly. And, you know, and certainly within, you know, taking treatment within, a few weeks, that changed dramatically for me. But I think it was about the fact that knowing what was wrong with you, knowing that you could have a choice and you could make a difference in that is incredibly empowering for women. And, you know, I want to be in, as I did when I was pregnant and I chose the way I was going to have my baby. Now we all know babies don't come like that, but, you know, we like to try and choose how we're going to do. I bring up my children, I bring them up in a certain way, and we make choices about that. And I want to be able to make a choice about my health and my health at this age. But I don't just want to be able to do that because I'm white, middle class and educated. I want all women, whether they're, you know, whatever colour they are, whatever class they're from, to have the same ability to empower themselves to make those choices at this stage in their life. You know, this is not a case of the vanilla sisters, you know, rampaging on about another part of feminism that, you know, doesn't relate to people. You know, it's like when young women say to me, "Oh, I'm not a feminist." Well, you know, think again, because you are. But we don't relate to them, and they don't relate to the subject, and we must ensure that menopause is not like that. I know Carolyn Harris talks very succinctly about the fact that when she spoke to her, you know, friends in Swansea, in a working class area of Swansea, they said, "Oh, you're very posh having a menopause," you know, and that really resonates with me. That we mustn't. It has to be information that's out there, choice that's out there for all women. Whether you are a woman who is struggling to, you know, manage a pharmaceutical company or a CEO of a private equity company, or whether you are a woman that gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning to do a cleaning job before she puts her kids to school, all women need to have the same choice and ability to have the same treatment for their menopause.
You touched on something earlier as well. Well said, by the way. I completely agree with everything you have just said there. But a question kind of came into my head, and we spoke about this a long time ago, but I think it'd be really relevant for now, which is the UK market when it comes to the menopause discussion in comparison to other markets around the world. Now, obviously, you spearhead the UK part of this conversation, but from an awareness point of view, are there differences when it comes to that openness, awareness, the talking points of menopause for women?
Yeah, massively. I mean, it's certainly across Europe, with the exception of Germany. The German market is very similar to the UK market in terms of the amount of women taking medication, different types of education, but certainly in Southern Europe, in Spain, in Italy, it's very taboo. In France, it's very difficult. The amount of HRT, for example, prescribed in these countries, where we talk about 15% of eligible women in the UK, it would be nearer 2, 3, 4% in those countries. So they have never recovered from this fear and of, you know, getting breast cancer, of it being dangerous, and, you know, and not being spoken about actually by these women, just not spoken about, or by their healthcare professionals. And if you think in a lot of these countries, they have private gynecology, you know, they go and see their gynecologist very regularly, much more so than we do here, where we only go when there's a problem, then it's still not talked about. So there's huge variation. And then, of course, in America, you've got it's so variable. I mean, I've certainly got friends in California who struggled to get HRT. You know, there's lots of different. The Americans like to compound, make their own mixes of. You know, this is terrible, really, in terms of managing hormones. And so there's lots of different elements at play there. But again, a lack of understanding. You know, one of my friends who lives in San Francisco, very liberal, well thought, you know, San Francisco is not, you know, Iowa. It's somewhere where you would expect, you know, to get reasonable care. Had a hysterectomy and was told by her gynecologist she didn't need HRT. So, I mean, which is utterly ridiculous. So you know, all these things just show that there's a huge amount of work to do. And I know that a lot of the women who are making a massive difference in this country have a passion, including Davina and all those other people, to take it globally and to make sure that women across the world have the same opportunities.
And so the UK market in comparison to these other markets is more progressive.
Yeah, it is. It is more progressive. And so what I always say to people is it's not brilliant here, but if you think it's not brilliant here, it's worse in other places. So, we have done a lot of work. We've seen in the last couple of years huge amounts of growth in the market, both for hormonal and non-hormonal treatments as well, and choices. So that, and this conversation wouldn't have been going on 5 years ago. So we see a lot of progression, but we're not saturating the market. We still have a long way to go. So all the people that say, well, I'm fed up hearing about menopause, well, button up, because it's not going away, and we're going to carry on talking about it till all these women have equitable choice.
Absolutely. And I think, so I guess my last kind of question for you really is, in your experience across the years, what role do you think that brands, companies can play in breaking down those current taboos in society and actually changing that narrative around menopause and actually supporting the education of it as well?
I do think brands have a really important part of this. If you think that, and the first thing I think is, it comes back to your point about your advice to us when you first started working with us, is research is really important, and there is nothing, as a menopausal woman myself, I hate more than people making assumptions around the fact that, oh, do you need a fan? No, I don't, thank you. So I'd like a gin. That's what I'd like.
Wouldn't we all?
That's universal.
Yeah, that's not
Well,
just
yeah,
women.
to be fair. And but so having that research about what the issues are for women, what is important to them, I think is incredibly important, and brands have a responsibility to do that. And whatever brand you are, whether you're makeup, whether you're sanitary towels, whether you're supplements, health supplements like we are, you have a responsibility to understand your market and to ask the questions. And I listened to some of that research that we did, and it was surprising to me. The question would be asked, and I think, oh, well, I know the answer to this, in a quite a cocky way, because I live and breathe this. And it wasn't what I thought. And it's really important that we understand that. And I do believe that, I am a great believer that all brands, if they're talking about it, I'm happy. I see advertisements on television for brands, targeting this group of women. Some of them I like, some of them I don't like, but I don't really care, because they're talking about it and they're making the conversation. And I think that, the more that brands do that, and the more that they understand and can actually help shape the conversation. I know, for example, at the moment, Boots have got a menopause bus going around the country with This Morning, the TV show. Great. Great. I'm all for that. And, that they're taking doctors and they're having those conversations. So I think, but the responsibility, I do think, is about understanding it completely and research, because it's not just about hot flushes.
Chris?
Yeah, no, well, absolutely. So I think the brand thing, unsurprisingly, perhaps for me, you'd hear, I absolutely relish the opportunity to activate a social purpose-based campaign with Tina. I've been a vocal critic of what I would call unrelated brand purpose, adopting a marketer's favorite cause. Why? Well, because it's fashionable or whatever.
Yeah.
So this is a chance to really do something. Talking again about the research, if you follow the research we did, there were times you could feel a little bit bleak about the subject, okay? I noticed quite a few people, when asked how they felt about experiencing menopause, quite a common comment was sad.
Yeah.
And that really got to me, okay?
Yeah.
Because as I was alluding to earlier, you can't completely eliminate all the physical symptoms that somebody's going to have. But the mental state surely is something that society, as I alluded to, can impact on. And I think this is where we as an agency will have a rare chance to make a difference, where it matters. And if just a few less people felt sad about their condition, as it were, that will be a very good thing. And I think we have the opportunity to do that.
I mean, I think that's really important. And of course, the sadness and the anxiety are often why women are given antidepressants. Now, of course, years ago, a lot of them were locked up in asylums at this age, because they were losing their minds. And so, we haven't really progressed that much. We're just giving them antidepressants to shut them up and get them out of the GP surgery. And the fact is that sadness, it doesn't need antidepressants. It needs an understanding of what you are and an education so you can make choice. And that then you feel less sad when you're able to make choice.
I mean, even just look at a woman's monthly cycle.
Yeah.
I'll have a couple of days a month where I sit there and go, I really want to cry today and I don't know why. And I'm not an overly emotional person in that sense. But when you start actually trying to take the time to be more aware of what's going on in your own body, I can look at the apps or whatever that I use to track and go, that makes sense.
Absolutely.
But when you're entering that kind of a later stage in life, it's on such a bigger scale.
Yeah. And of course, you're managing things, so you're often managing children or aging parents or big careers. So you're not as focused. My 12-year-old daughter who's having massive hormone, she says to me sometimes, I just feel so angry. And I think because you've got time to think about how you're feeling. Do you know what I mean? And actually, the problem is in menopause, we don't have time. And so all we know is we're not sleeping, we're feeling terrible, but we haven't got time to analyse it in the same way that you can when you're younger.
It's the headspace.
So it's that headspace. And so I do think you do end up feeling sad. And I think that is, we can stop a lot of women feeling sad and by really helping them with their choices, I think.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much
for
it's
taking
been a pleasure.
The time. I love talking.
Oh, well, I love you. So it's amazing.
Thank you very
to
much.
Have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris, as well. I could literally talk to you about this for hours, and hopefully we will see you back here next time in a cheeky
in the
little
hot
vest.
flush vest.
Oh,
exactly.
yeah.
The Menno vest.
Minute by minute.
Bring it on.
Brilliant. Thank you so much,
Thank
Tina.
you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for everyone that's been listening today. If you have any questions, you want to have a chat with us about this subject, please do get in touch at podcast@thepulagency.co.uk, and we hope to see you next time. Thank you.